think I'm going to ever get sick of that intro. Super excited here to get into everyone's favorite topic of VPPs. So I'm going to let everyone do a quick introduction of themselves, along with your favorite resource in a VPP. Yeah, it's a twist on your favorite DER, because it has to be something you can aggregate.
I'm Seth Frater-Thompson. I am embarrassingly wearing the same shirt that I was in that photo. CEO of Energy Hub. We have about 2 million DERs on our platform. We mostly work with utilities, and we like putting all the DERs together into one meta VPP.
They're all your favorite children.
They're all favorite children.
Okay.
They all have, yeah.
Dana?
No favorite children?
No.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Dana. Thank you so much for having us. I'm co-founder and CEO at Voltus. We're a VPP aggregator, DR, DERs, load flexibility. We like to just include it all. We've got roughly 8.1 gigawatts under management now. We work with all resources from the smallest EVs and thermostats all the way on up through large data centers. And my favorite resource, I really want to pick one, and I was going to not pick one, and now I feel like I can't do that. So I'm going to say flexible data centers, because I don't think we've seen the limit of what we can do there.
Okay, I'm excited to get into that.
Hi, I'm Ryan Long. I work at Xcel Energy. We serve 3.5 million electric customers across 8 different states. I currently hold 2 roles at Xcel. I have been president of our business in Minnesota and the Dakotas, called Xcel Energy Minnesota, North and South Dakota. But I've transitioned now. I'm our chief legal and compliance officer, but I'm currently holding both hats. And my favorite distributed resource, I'm sure we'll talk about this as we go, but it is a resource that we are hoping to add to our system as part of the distributed capacity procurement and battery storage on the distribution grid, which we'll talk more about.
Right. Chris?
Hey, thanks for having me. Chris from Sunrun. I run our distributed power plant business, not our virtual power plant business. And we've got more than 100,000 residential customers with batteries enrolled in programs this year, and about 135,000, my team's here, is that right? 135,000 batteries enrolled. And you guys make me nervous. I speak at a lot of conferences, but most conferences I can just bullshit because no one knows anything. Like, you guys know stuff, and so I'm very nervous. And I think my favorite DER is bidirectional electric vehicles. Very excited about that.
Ooh, okay. I love that. Yeah, so I don't know. I have so many things I want to talk about with you all. I guess to start, we've been at this. I think earlier we said, we've been saying the word 10 years. Dana and I in a conversation, she's like, I think it's been more like 20 years. And then we realized that, we both kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. We're related to an Enernoc TVA deployment in 2007. Dana was doing the work. I was doing the evaluation of the work. I think we all know there was a lot of improvement to be made from 2007 to where we are today. But it's kind of wild that we've kind of been, the space has been evolving and sort of growing, and we've been trying to do aggregation for a really long time, and it feels like we're in a moment where we've already seen some today, we're gonna see some more with Chris's presentation later. We're doing gigawatt scale, we're doing these sort of massive aggregations and deployments. And so I just wanna start with a little bit of, a win. Like, let's hear what you guys are doing right now and like what you're most sort of proud and excited about. So Dana, I'm gonna kick it over to you to start us off.
I think the thing that I'm just most excited about, and this is gonna sound a little corny, but it's just the general energy of the industry, which there's some play on words in there about energy, but it just feels like we're all having this moment. Everybody in this industry is excited. We have momentum. We have real solutions for real problems, and problems that are now not just like wonky problems that a niche group of people understand, but these are problems that something like 20% of Americans now are either struggling to or can't pay their bills. And so the fact that this is now a kitchen table topic, everybody's talking about electricity pricing. It is a problem that the companies in this room can actively solve. and just the influx of energy and talent and like people out of college and new ideas and solutions are just very, very exciting, whereas I feel like the last couple of decades, that makes me sound so old, Colleen, but it has felt a little bit
very
like
short decades.
like an uphill battle where we're kind of convincing people that there's a problem that we want to solve, and now it's just so stupid obvious that there is a problem that we can solve, that's really exciting, and it feels like we're having that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. We can get back into what people are excited about, but I am curious about that. Like, what is different about the moment, right? We clearly feel the time is now. Like, is it affordability? Is it capacity? Is it both? Like, how are you guys seeing who you're even engaging with and is interested in this shift?
Yeah, I mean, I think the deployment of the DERs, people buying DERs for whatever reason, right? Because it makes their house more comfortable, or they like the way their car drives, or it's battery, which saves them money, or whatever. We're kind of riding that wave, and then we're turning that wave of adoption into VPPs or DPPs. And so, like, it's a convergence thing. And I think the fact that we're at such scale that these things are mainstream is pretty profound, right? Like, I don't know, Chris, what the stat is in terms of like how many homes in Puerto Rico have batteries, but it's a very large number. If you look at like VPP participation in VPP programs at utilities, we have several utilities who have 10% of their population is participating in their VPP. And so one of the previous panels was talking about permissionless. We have permissionless and permissioned happening at scale at the same time. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for me, I think it's scale, maturity, and need have all converged at the same time. So like if we had this need 5 years ago, I don't think we would have been ready. We wouldn't have had the scale or the maturity. And so I think we are in the right place at the right time to really show our stuff. And for me, and I think probably for the whole industry, Dana has done a lot of publishing on this too, 2025 was the summer, was the year where we proved this is real. And for us at Sunrun, that's why we don't call them virtual power plants anymore, because there's nothing fucking virtual about them at all. Seriously. They're distributed fucking power plants.
Woo! Yeah.
Right? I don't mean like distributed power plant, because that doesn't even capture it, because they do more than a power plant can, but I think that's better than virtual. And so we made a very conscious branding decision this year to pivot away from VPPs to distributed power plants.
Completely real power plants.
Yeah. Can we swear? Are there any kids in the audience? Can we let us swear?
I mean, I'm all for the rebranding to DPP. I think it is more accurate. I agree. Virtual sounds ephemeral and not reliable. Even though, I mean, yeah, we'll get into that. So, so I think it's super interesting that we're sort of at this point where this need is growing. We have this convergence. I mean, I'm curious how we see that play out in sort of the state landscape, right? Obviously, and I know everyone was kind of like, do we have to talk about it? But I'm going to make you talk about it for a couple minutes. Obviously, California like defunded DSGS, and I think what the future of that market is. Newsom vetoed a bunch of things that could have made it better. How should we think about that? I know there's some hot takes on the stage, so should we feel sad? Should we feel like it was the right thing and something better is going to come in its place? Should we feel like we don't care about California? Like what's going on?
I mean, I think we need California to get it right. I think that California led the market in adoption of a bunch of DERs, right? Like we have a somewhat of a debt to California in terms of like having brought us down the solar curve, for exple, right?
Kind of the Germany of VPPs.
Exactly. And so, well, okay. I'm going to leave that with you. I think they're the California of renewables, right? And so that was very, very helpful, but California has not done a great job of converting the DER adoption into VPPs. And what California has lacked is predictability, stability, all of the things that would be necessary. And so, there was a load flex summit that the CEC put on a few months ago, and we ran the numbers, and you could see that if California were Arizona, you would see I forget the number, 2-3 gigawatts of VPP participation today, right? Because California is in some categories, it's 5x what other states are in terms of adoption, but the conversion rates, the funnel conversion of that into participating in VPP is bad. The monetization is wrong. And so the good news is I think the folks who are working on this in California know this, and they are passionate about getting it right. I would like to hope that the governor's decisions were about steering this in the direction of we're going to solve this through one channel and not the fragmentation problem that California's had in the past.
Okay, I like that take. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I mean, so this is a complicated question.
It's a complicated question.
And I can't get in too much trouble, but so Diablo Canyon is that 1 gigawatt, 1.2, somewhere around there, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not to close Diablo Canyon is always in the news in California, right? And obviously we cannot compare a 2 or 4 hour battery resource to a nuclear power plant, but I'm going to do it. This summer with Tesla, we were operating about a half a nuclear power plant in DSGS.
Yeah.
And that's just been sidelined. We will not operate that in the same way next year. So it's like if we just took Diablo Canyon, and next year it might be a full gigawatt that we're operating. It's like if we just took Diablo Canyon, we're like, no thanks. This is working, but no thanks. It's already built, but we don't need it.
Yeah.
And so it's very frustrating for us. And to Seth's point, you can't build a long-term business or strategy when we have lumpy year-over-year, even month-over-month programs.
Yeah. And Ryan, I'd be curious, not necessarily your thoughts on California, but like how Excel decided. I mean, maybe you can give the 30-second view for people that maybe don't know what you guys just announced a week or two ago. But how did you guys decide that that was the right model for you?
Yeah. So what we announced was what we have branded called Capacity Connect. It's a distributed capacity procurement program. The idea is that it is utility-deployed batteries on our distribution grid that are distributed front of the meter, that are aggregated and controlled by us as the utility. And what caused us to walk into this space, caused me to walk into this space as president of the company was honestly sort of looking back and thinking, I have not been in the utility industry that long and maybe haven't lived through the battles that this room has had with utilities or that utilities have had with folks in this room. And so I walked into a leadership position of a utility in the upper Midwest and thought, it seems like we're underutilizing a part of our grid. And I walked into that position at a time where we needed to maximize the utilization of the assets that we already had invested in, and thinking that be it distributed energy, be it rooftop solar or battery storage, has a lot to offer my customers in terms of value, in terms of reliability, resiliency. It's a new way to invest in environmental justice communities. And so we thought that we had something to add, frankly, as a utility that understands our grid, has deep planning expertise, and thought we could deploy these in a strategic way that maximizes the value of these resources across our system for our customers by targeting circuits, by targeting feeders, that we can actually solve problems by deploying batteries in those locations as opposed to having to deal with the challenges or problems caused by a sort of random showing up of resources on our distribution grid, which we've gotten better at too over time. And the one thing I want to be clear about is that with the Capacity Connect program, we think that we have something to add. We think that developers have something to add behind the meter. We think that VPPs that leverage customer equipment and things like thermostats absolutely have a place on the grid. We just saw this as an opportunity for us to step into that space.
Really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I've been thinking about from, the changes we're seeing in California, which, Chris, to your point on this sort of loss of a power plant, right? And it's not talked about in that framing, but that is what it is, which I'm sure we will find solutions for and people are working on. And I'm not saying that I don't think California's going to figure something out. But then we have, utilities doing batteries. We have, bidding and aggregating into the wholesale markets, which I know Voltus is doing much more than just that, but that is a lot of what you're doing. You guys are working with utilities and the customer side and kind of creating that platform. So there's a lot of different ways, right? And we said earlier, right, 66% of people said program fragmentation is our biggest issue in 5 to 10 years. I'm curious if you guys actually view that as an issue or if that's just, I don't know, power plants need to figure out how to work in a lot of different regulatory environments and states and markets. Like, Is the future this? Is there a convergence at some point? Is it a problem?
Well, I think the program fragmentation there's a lot of permutations to that. I mean, if you look at, like, we work with Duke Energy, for example, on battery programs and on thermostat programs, and they have to file those programs, like in North Carolina, South Carolina, Indiana, Ohio. They have to go around. So there's going to be some natural, call that like fragmentation light. I don't think that's not like I don't view that as a huge issue. Where you have unnecessary fragmentation is where you have a single resource. Let's say it's a battery. That battery should be available to the bulk system for economic value, for resource adequacy, for local congestion relief. It should be available for all of those things. It doesn't make sense to say, no, you have to pick one, right? You should just turn that over to whoever the operator is, or potentially multiple overlapping operators, right? In California, for example, you have CAISO and you have the IOUs. You also have the CCAs. There's probably a model in the future where you want to sort of separate from the customer experience. I'm just saying, I would like to be part of a flex program. And then behind the scenes, everyone figures out some system for how are you going to use this optimally on any given day.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Sorry. I appreciate that because you were talking, Colleen, about fragmentation, and I was thinking a little bit about, gosh, we're probably part of the problem, but I see it as really an opportunity to experiment in different states. And so we have the DCP moving forward in Minnesota. We have a very different VPP program moving forward in Colorado. And I love that from a company perspective because we're going down two very different paths. Eventually, I will see those cross-pollinate, and I think good ideas will make their way from Minnesota to Colorado, Colorado to Minnesota. But I love that we're able to go down two paths as a company and kind of explore what really works for our customers. But that obviously creates complexity for folks on the other side of the table as you're dealing with this fragmented landscape.
I was going to say, and actually to bring us, I was sitting here also thinking about my thoughts on California to bring us back to that a little. I know we all still want to talk about California, and I promise to come back to your questions because I am super, super okay with a bunch of complexity and different types of ways that resources can participate. What I am absolutely not okay with is stop, start, program this, pilot that, no, we don't like that. Like the macro equivalent of the tragedy and frustration of California is what happens with like the US government pulling the plug on projects that were well along the way that just made a whole ton of sense, and then all of a sudden it's not there, and now that's a really, really hard thing for investors and others to get on board with. So that's like the macro example of the California DSGS thing playing out. And so complexity, complicated stuff, I think that's what this industry thrives on, is taking all that complexity and saying, consumer, what you get is savings.
Yep.
And we're gonna handle that complexity. But what we don't want is the death by 1,000 pilots and this swinging back and forth. And so the program approach that California has taken is frustrating to me and kind of tragic because I want to move to markets and a little bit more long-term pricing signals. But also, we were talking about this beforehand. A lot of times when you get a VPP panel together, everyone's we kind of like to talk about what's not working, but there's also a ton of stuff that is working. And so I'm also very confident and full of optimism that even in California, because rates are just so high, it's what, 40 cents a kilowatt hour or something? It's higher. The demand charges are, someone told me the other day that it's $750,000 a megawatt year for demand charges. It's absolutely insane. So the solutions we'll bring with batteries and all the other technologies in this room, we're gonna find a way, but it is frustrating it's tragic when and then I have to look away because I'm I can't even anymore.
Can I just agree with Dana on that?
Yeah.
And
Please do.
I think, I agree with you. I also think that you're not hearing us say that there is a software or a hardware problem because there isn't, right? So it's the same batteries in Puerto Rico keeping the lights on that are providing wholesale peak production in California and load serving entity capacity tag reduction in New England, right? Same stuff. We have no problem on that side. And we also I'm not concerned about program fragmentation, as it were, but strictly speaking for residential batteries and bidirectional EVs, the rules and programs were not written for those resources. So we're still treated as demand response, measured at the utility point of interconnection in many cases, and the utilities want to only count load drop. So fragmentation of programs is fine. But best practices on program components like that need to be aligned around the country.
Interesting. I'd like to get a little bit more into that, because I think that probably also has a little bit to do with, Jigger stole my thunder and talking about Dana's or Voltus's filing, but because that's not exactly the same thing as data access, but I do think it has to do with like, how do you validate what a system is doing? Where are you looking? Are you looking at the meter? Is it load drop? Is it export? Is it what the battery said it did? So is that kind of what you're talking about? And can you expand a little bit more
so
on
all
what
the
you think success would look like there?
Yeah, so we're in 17 programs around the country or so, and all the programs that we are in, we meter directly at the battery level, at the inverter level. That's revenue grade metering that we have to give to the U.S. Treasury and Goldman Sachs and our finance partners. So like we trust that metering, and it's actually more accurate in many cases than utility meters. So yeah, metering directly at the battery level. And receiving credit for any incremental energy the battery pushes out, regardless of what's happening in the home, because batteries are fundamentally buffering the home and then exporting to the grid and buffering a few neighbors' homes. So that's one thing that we really focus on.
But here's the tragedy of what he just said. That metering, that revenue grade metering that's good enough for all those entities, that somehow is not good enough for some of the wholesale markets where what's only good enough is the utility meter, which may or may not work. Which, by the way, ratepayers paid for when we deployed all the AMI and smart metering, but also don't have access to their data. So that's what I know everybody loves talking about data access as much as they love talking about California policy, right? So we're back to talking about VPP problems, but that is what we're trying to solve. And we can't help ourselves.
Back. Yeah, we can't only talk about the
bad. It's bad.
Yeah, and I mean, in your mind, is the solve just allowing you to use the inverter meters? Or is it getting access to
the word just is hard. It's like, it's not just, it is so hard to just, but yes, if we could use the metering from entities like Sunrun and others, like the notion that pick your favorite utility in your head, because I don't want to pick on anybody, but definitely not my couchmate, that utility meter is more accurate than some of these other technologies. It's just, it's just not true. And so what we're trying to do is show that there's any number of sources that could be meter solutions, and also we want access to it for the consumer. In particular, if we've already deployed it and rate-based it, because that will unlock a lot more of the smaller DERs and residential DERs.
Also, like, why are we arguing about these things? Like, aren't we short on capacity in most parts of the country? Like, we got to move. Like.
Yeah, I mean, we got to move, but it's hard to move without the data.
Yeah. The data exists. Use it. Build VPPs, DPPs. Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan, do you have, like, how do you think about this?
Yeah, I've been sitting here kind of listening to the exchange, thinking about it myself. I line up with Seth. I feel like the time for arguing about this is past. If the metering is good, let's prove to ourselves, prove to the utilities, prove to MISO, prove to PJM that it's good. We may go on and debate the policy and how exactly we compensate and what that all looks like. Let's quit arguing about the data if the data is good. And I think that my hope is that in this new era, we'll start to see movement there because the technology has come such a long way. So I don't disagree with anything you guys said about meter accuracy relative to the utilities. And so I think that there's some real progress that we could make, especially in this era of load growth.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm interested in maybe getting into for a minute is, Ryan, you mentioned like one of part of the value of you guys kind of deciding a little bit of where to put batteries is that you have that full picture, right, of where would be the best places for this. And I know this is something that a lot of utilities have talked about and have really struggled with how you kind of share that to third-party developers. We all know hosting capacity maps are they're better than guessing, and I know a lot of utilities have put a lot of effort into it. So I'm not trying to throw shade, but it's really complicated, right? Because there's a lot of things happening. Blah blah blah. We don't need to get into hosting capacity maps and how we do it. But I am curious, like, do we feel like we need to know where things are in order to be valuable? That they're valuable anywhere? There's obviously higher value in certain areas. Like, Ryan, how do you see potentially being able to work with third parties in a hypothetical program, not your current program?
And we're having this debate in Minnesota, in Colorado, around our hosting capacity maps and the clarity of them, and the fact that we blur certain things or aren't granular all the time. And I acknowledge the DCP, part of the strategy of the DCP is that we do understand our grid very well, right? Not only that, we understand where our grid is going, right? We understand our communities, we understand where growth is, and we understand what that growth might do to our system. And so we can think a little bit around the corners of our distribution grid and make those investments. I think that we've gotten better at the information we're able to make public. There are always going to be limits, you all know this from utilities, when we think about security and cybersecurity. And I know that that is frustrating to a lot of people, but it comes from a place of responsibility and conservativeness around issues that we think are really important and that we have slowly been pulled along, to be totally frank, and I think that's a good thing. We should have been pulled along, and I think we probably still have some room to go to find where the right line is, where we're actually making choices around security, but also transparency and making our grid accessible to third parties in ways that will better our customers and bring value to our customers. And so I think that that's a journey that we probably need to make quicker progress on. But I also think that it's not just us looking at more granular hosting maps that makes the DCP value. It's leveraging our scale and our understanding around integrated system planning and our communities and where they're headed as well.
Yeah, and I guess, Chris, I'd be curious, like, how much do you guys think about, obviously there's the customer acquisition side, so you need to go where the customers are that want you to go, but then there's also the grid value side. So how are you guys kind of handling
it's a great
that trade-off?
Yeah, great question, Colleen. I think it's different on the resi side because we have in the past run programs, actually here in New York with Orange and Rockland, where we tried to target hyper-local, this was 6 years ago, I think, target hyper-localized geo use cases. And what we found is if we went into a random neighborhood that maybe didn't already lean towards wanting solar and batteries, but the utility had a high need, they needed to upgrade a substation. If we offered an essentially free Tesla Powerwall backed by the utility, customers didn't want it. Homeowners didn't want it. They're like, get out of here, right? And so on the resi side, I think it's a little bit different. So fast forward now, 6 years later, we're running a program with PG&E this summer. It's called the ACDC program. Good little bit of branding on their part. Yeah.
Someone was very excited about that when they named it.
ACDC? Yeah, it's pretty cool actually. So we have a high saturation of batteries in the PG&E territory already. Then we overlaid that on where they had a need on the distribution system. And we're operating those batteries differently, not for bulk system peak reduction, but for local congestion relief, basically. That's been massively successful this summer. And so it's two different approaches, two different approaches going to the market. I think for us, deploying as many resources as we possibly can and then operating those first for bulk system peak reduction there's so much low-hanging fruit there and so much value. And if we did that in every territory in the country, we would be really far down the road of distributed power plants. Then we can start doing locational.
Yeah, the frustrating thing about this is that this was obvious to all of us then, right? It was the equivalent of you've got a piece of bread and you're gonna take peanut butter and just lay it out on lines, right? That doesn't make any sense. You smear the peanut butter over the whole piece of bread to get started. Yeah. And then, this was pretty obvious that you needed to build up a critical mass. There needed to be sort of a market-wide signal saying you should get a battery and you should lend it to the utility occasionally. And then over time, you'd have enough critical mass that you could turn into something local. But sometimes you just have to wait for everyone to figure it out. Yeah. Can I just shout out really quick?
Absolutely.
Two different things here. So first of all, not to focus too much on the 2 decades, but the unlock that we all owed Dana and
Dana
others.
was 10 when she started in the business.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good one.
I've been in it that long too, so I'm feeling my age.
The unlock that we are all still benefiting from companies like Enernoc is the establishment of a value of DR and system-wide capacity, right? That is still the primary thing that we're all leveraging. And then to the present day, there are only a very small number of utilities, including Xcel, who are now attempting to say, here's the locational value. There have been people for the last, 5-10 years trying to do that in very, very complicated ways. And I hate those complicated ways because they're never going to go anywhere. The implementation is too much of a pain in the ass. So the fact that Xcel is just here's an extra layer of value that you can tap into when you're local. That is huge for the industry. And the benefit of the industry is that the next utility who tries this will look at that work, put their own spin on it, do their experiment, and so on and so forth. And in 5 more years, that will be a nationwide thing with a bunch of different permutations, and that will have unlocked like a whole new level of potential here.
Yeah, I love that thinking. And that actually made me think of something else that has kind of been on my mind, which is how, to one extent, I'm always like, okay, how do we, broaden and have a lot of third parties involved? And then to the other extent, you get some added, you get some added complexity where if you're like, oh, this is, this congested spot, and maybe this goes back to your point of like, you just need to spread peanut butter everywhere and then figure it out, where you're like, go and build here, and here's extra incentive to build in this congested area. If everyone runs over there, and all of a sudden you're like, ooh, now that's too hot, too many batteries, too many batteries there. And like, how do you guys think about how we should be, I don't know, like adjusting and still be able to like create the right investment structures for people? Because I do think that's like a complicated question, right? It was talked about earlier with the EVs, right? Where if you create a rate class where it's really cheap if you have an EV to charge between midnight and 7 a.m., suddenly you're peaking at midnight because everyone starts their charge at the same time. You have to think about, okay, how do we get them to all sort of start charging within 5 minutes of each other and then it's fine. I don't know, there's kind of a half question in there, but I'm going to roll with it.
Well, just an observation, like there's a corollary to like congestion pricing in like Uber and Lyft, right? Where if you're driving Uber and you're like, well, not here, but if you were in, out by JFK, not on Governor's
Island Uber.
If you're out on JFK and you see that there's a congestion fee available in Manhattan, you're not going to get there in time, right? You can't steer the ship like that.
Yeah.
It's an emergent behavior that kind of like by the time people notice, it has taken care of itself. And so I do think we have to remember that like that's how these sort of economic signals work, is they emerge in complex ways.
Whereas we're all still living in like salad bar land in some places, where it's like the cucumber costs as much per pound as the caviar. Like, in what world does that make sense, right? So just the more that we can get towards those price signals, we know how to do it. We have the technology to do it.
I love this.
I loved your point. Did
salad
you like
bar
salad?
with caviar.
Well, he got me going with the.
Which salad?
I was like, what salad bars are you going to?
You go to like any New York salad, you put all the food on it and you go and you weigh it and that's what you pay.
Oh no, totally. Yeah, it's just the caviar specifically.
Oh, the caviar.
It's like very fancy.
I don't know.
Very fancy salad bar food.
I just was like, quick, think of something.
But yeah,
really
it's like but I'm totally
expensive.
with you. When I see people put like rice in something that's
Okay,
made, I'm like,
salmon.
what are you doing?
I don't know.
Wasting so much money.
I don't know. I was really into the peanut butter analogy, and I just wanted to know what the jelly was. Can we come back to that later?
Yeah.
We'll move on.
I also think, I don't want to step on the salad bar caviar analogy, but I also think there's like, it's funny that we haven't been talking about time of use rates at all, because this, for me, brings up the difference between rates and grid service programs, right? Rates, by definition, have a very long regulatory lag and are sort of backward looking. So the net billing tariff in California is probably the best example of this, where super complex, locked in, way ahead of time into the future, customers can't understand it, and in fact, customer bills in the near term will go up to bank credits for the long term. So it doesn't make any sense. So what we're finding out, or what our modeling is showing after operating the net billing tariff for a couple of years now, is we're just going to put the batteries in self-consumption mode, never export for the rate. Only export for grid services programs, right? Because that's dynamic. And I'll give you an example. Is Brenna here? Brenna, can you stand up, put your hand up?
Oh, wow.
Go ahead. So I've got my whole team here for an offsite, and we were going to a Broadway show on Wednesday, and Brenna got a dispatch notice from Luma in Puerto Rico for 15 minutes in the past. Like, I don't know if they messed up the timestamp. 15 minutes in the past. They said full power now because they were facing a rolling blackout. Like, you cannot do that with rates. And so I think, we also need to really separate out how are we incentivizing this behavior.
Totally. Yeah.
No.
Okay, well, I do want to, so in our last few minutes, I did want to get into, we haven't yet talked about the Huels test.
Ooh.
I know. That's 5 minutes is an ambitious amount of time, but we're going to do it anyway. So
Sure.
let's, what does success look like? And I'm going to set Seth up for his theory.
Yeah. Okay. So
Then
the
I wanna hear
theory,
from everybody.
definitely not my theory. Credit goes to Mr. Huels, Matthias Huels from my team. So the thought experiment is basically, it starts with the idea of the Turing test, which is that a computer passes the Turing test if when you're talking to a computer versus a person, you can't tell the difference. How do you tell whether a VPP can really substitute for, you mentioned like, does it actually replace a nuclear plant, right? Down the line, at some point, VPPs or DPPs will pass the Hewell's test, but they don't today. So the question is, how do you define the sort of stages of progress? And so, so we're going to publish, or maybe we already have published today, a framework for levels going from sort of where we started, which was demand response, to level 2, where you're doing active load shaping. You can do a little bit of limited kind of locational dispatch, to level 3, where you can do basically everything. You pass the Hewell's test at level 3, where you're grid integrated up to a point, your automated response to market conditions and bulk signals. And then level 4 is where you actually surpass what a traditional power plant can do, because it's distributed and because you're able to leverage existing distribution infrastructure. So we're very excited about this because I just think we need a roadmap of to tell, are we making progress along this thing or not? Can we unlock those future values? And what I love is we talked about this at the Leadership Summit yesterday, and immediately got into very nerdy debates about does this count as level 2 or 3 or 4? And I think that was the hope, is that it would help drive a more sophisticated conversation about this.
Seth, where on average do you think we are, Seth? Is it the Hewell's test?
Yeah, Hewell's, yeah.
Okay.
I think we're, depending on the utility, some are at 2, some are at 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here listening to it for the first time. I think once you get to 3 or 4, you're going to have utility engineers and planners who are very happy to have those tools and pull those levers when they're available.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that there's a big topic these days is the conversation about, does part of the utility think this is only at level 1 and other parts think that it's at level 3?
Fair point.
And that becomes a really interesting like change management problem
Yep.
for utility leadership.
Yep.
Seth, is it the case, I haven't read the paper yet, but I love the heuristic. Is it the case that getting from 1 to 2 to 3 takes 1 to 2 decades, but getting to 4 might take many decades?
That's an interesting question. I think that probably not many decades. I think that one of the conversations that started yesterday was you might say that your system, somebody did say to me yesterday that their system was at level 4, and I said, you can't be at level 4 on your own.
Right.
You can only be at level 4 when you're fully integrated into the system. So if you're in Ryan's shoes, the question is, how do you take a system that is capable of receiving a bunch of signals from the utility to do layers of different grid services and integrate it into the actual systems that the utility uses? And I think that is the hard work. And the problems that are there, I think, are largely not the problems that people think are going to be the problems. There are big issues associated with just like for us within Energy Hub, we think of this problem as being dominated by, there's a state machine problem of you have to track what's the sort of as-operated state of the grid and have that mirrored. I need to be able to configure your batteries to mirror the way Ryan's distribution grid is operating at any given moment. And I need pieces of the utility system to tell me that they're congested or that they're forecasting a congestion in the future. And managing all of that across a very vibrant ecosystem of hundreds of DER manufacturers is a big, interesting systems engineering problem.
All right. Yeah, I feel like, that was amazing. I know I have so many more questions on that, but we don't really have the time to get into them. But I would say read the paper, debate it. I will ask just one last question, which is what do you think Energy Hub is, or does it vary by state?
What level are we at?
Yeah.
2, 3, somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Depends on the.
Yeah, actively working toward level 3 and facing a lot of very practical, unsexy problems associated with that.
All right. Any quick last things that people feel like this group needs to know before we part? What they should be working on, the biggest thing they should be tackling, the biggest thing they should be excited about?
Your last question was how we're all thinking about success.
Yeah.
I went down this wonderful, I just feel like I learned so much from you. Where my brain was going was, 1, can we not get a D- on the state of our electricity grid as a country here? Also worldwide, but just sitting in the US, I think that's a measurable, achievable thing. 2, can we please allow people to be able to afford their electricity? I think we can bring down the bills significantly, 20, 30%, and hold it that way. And 3, I don't want us to be limited on the amount of load growth we see. So we talk about, so it's like quality of life, climate, the AI race, or whatever we want to call it.
AI race, yeah.
I don't want to limit us because we can't do things because we don't have enough supply. So
Abundance agenda, I love it.
That was where my brain went, like limitless growth while keeping it affordable and reliable. So
Amazing.
no D-minuses.
I was just really excited to be here, honestly. I don't know how many utility people are here or how many utility execs you've had on the stage, but I think, yes. But I think,
Woo, you got a feel.
I think we need to talk to each other more. And I think that there's a whole lot of collaboration and success that we can have together. So I've been trying to come to these spaces and have more conversations. I would love to do like a job swap with one of you for, just to kind of live in your shoes and have to deal with the utility. I've sort of done that a little bit through the DCP, dealing with my own engineers and my own planners, and I've walked away from a lot of those meetings frustrated. But I think more of that empathy building is really valuable for our collective industries.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I would say, like, if there's so much, many young people here, make me feel really, really old. And if you're either a young person looking for your first, only old people say young person.
Yeah.
If you're a
dated
youth,
ourselves on this.
hello, fellow youths. If you're looking for like your first step into this career, or even like a mid-career change, don't try to work at Sunrun or Voltus or Energy Hub. Go work at a utility or a public utilities commission as a staffer, because like that's really where we need to have change and have fresh thinking and good minds.
Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Colleen.